Unique people leading unique lives shape and inform Iowa City. This community is enhanced by these women and men who live in our midst, working, teaching, creating. Welcome to a series of conversations with people who have stories to tell. Join my guests and me, Ellen Buchanan, in a series of interviews called One of a Kind. My guest on One of a Kind is Lynne Lanning. Lynne is a wife, mother, extraordinary volunteer, not only in our community, but nationally and internationally as well. Lynne and her husband Richard founded Kid Needs, a foundation to research a rare kidney autoimmune disease entitled MPGN2 that infects their daughter. For the past 10 years, the young and the not so young and their canine friends have enjoyed the chili dog fair at the Johnson County Fairgrounds that raises money for Kid Needs. 100% of the funds raised goes to research. Besides her work for the Kidney Foundation, Lynne donates her time to the Iowa City Free Medical Clinic and the Free Lunch Program. She and members of her family have worked as volunteers in such disparate places as Guatemala, Mexico, Brazil, and Appalachia. Lynne has both a nursing and a law degree. She's a member of the First United Methodist Church and currently is working as an assistant advisor for undergrads in the School of Art. She and her husband Richard have 4 children, Ryan, Jenna and Jessica, who are identical twins, and Luke. Welcome to One of a Kind.
Thank you very much.
I know your story begins in Dallas, Texas, where you were born in April of 1955. Tell me just a bit about your first family.
My first family. My father's a United Methodist minister, now retired. My mother started out as a school teacher for special education and reading, and then became in charge of all the retirement programs for AT&T before it divested with Lucent. And I have a brother who's 6 years younger and 2 sisters who are 4 and 2 years younger than I am.
And so you moved around. I read that you moved around a lot.
Not too much. We moved from Dallas to New Jersey, and within New Jersey we moved to 3 places. My final one, so I moved right about kindergarten, and then my senior year of high school, we moved to another place. And then from there I went to North Carolina to school.
You went to Duke University. What did you take there?
At Duke, I was nursing.
Nursing.
Yeah, got a degree in nursing.
And then what took you back to Texas after you graduated from Duke?
I had gotten between my senior and junior year, I'd gotten an internship with the United States Public Health Corps, and I was stationed in Galveston. And I worked for the Shrimpers Hospital, and then they took the interns through that program on different places throughout Louisiana and the South to see what different facilities they operated in, trying to recruit us to continue on as second lieutenants and then progress up. And I loved going back to Texas again. It felt kind of like home, you know. I hadn't lived there, but I enjoyed it. So that took me back after graduation.
But when you were in Texas, maybe it was when you moved to Houston, I don't quite remember, but you got involved in going down and volunteering in Central America. Tell me about that.
Yeah. I worked as a surgical nurse and burn nurse, and one of the things I'd hoped to do with the nursing degree was be able to travel a bit. And so an opportunity came up to do a pediatric vaccination program through a group called Amigos de las Americas, and that I got sent down to the Dominican Republic for the summer.
Was that your first foray into out of the country in your work, doing your work?
It was my first time as a nurse. When we moved my senior year of high school, before my senior year, my father, thinking that the transition might be easier if he sent me out of the country completely and then back to a new place, sent me to Mexico to work for a summer. And I had done construction work there. And I loved it.
Literally construction work.
Yeah, I tarred roofs, put in plumbing for sewers and stuff, and we were working through the United Methodist Church there. And it was fantastic. We worked with a local population got to speak a lot of Spanish. In fact, most of the time we were speaking Spanish, which then gave me a love for working with the Hispanic cultures. And so when this opportunity came up to get down to the Dominican Republic, I seized that and then tried to get any opportunity I could afterwards to go down.
So it really was, that started your love of working in Central, and you went to South America eventually, didn't you, to Brazil?
I've been to Brazil also, and we'll be back again this summer.
So are you teaching or showing your children that this is a wonderful way to give back?
Yes, I think it's been very important. It was important to me when my dad sent me down. I was pretty much of a shy high school. Throughout high school, I was more of a nerdy kind of kid, I guess. And when my dad kind of threw me down in the middle of this, knowing that I was kind of shy, it was the best thing he could have ever done, because it made you have to interact, and it made you see that the world was a friendly place if you were friendly in the world. And so I think I learned a lot from that experience, and it was a life-changing in a real way for me. And so when my daughter got sick here, and this community has given so much to us, I wanted my children to be on the end of giving back. And so we had worked locally, although there's restrictions for children on what they can do on site through Habitat, which is very reasonable for liability issues. There are a lot of things they can't volunteer until they're older teens. And so I took them down to Guatemala. It was the first trip.
One at a time?
One at a time. We had always tried to take our children on adventures. My husband's from England, and so I would take one child over to see relatives that way, or else he would take them on boundary waters. But when they were old enough to start being able to do something to give back, I wanted them to see the broader world and to see that they had a role in a broader world of giving back. And so I took my daughter, who was not on dialysis, Jessica, down to Guatemala, and it was a life-changing event for her.
What did you do when the two of you went down, you and your daughter?
When we went down, we were working with a group from Kansas City who have a construction company from Kansas City who donate Butler buildings. And then they assemble a group to go down and build this Butler building in 10 days and work with the locals.
Excuse me, it's like kind of like a Habitat for Humanity, but
yeah, it's one of the Blitzkrieg kind of builds.
Yeah. And you go down, you stay 10 days, and then you're out of there?
You work all the time, and then you get this building made for them, and then you interact with the local populations, and they're all Maya Indians that we were working with. And they would have us to their homes. They would celebrate some of their traditions with us. But we would work from sunup to sundown and get it made. And that was a great thing. And Jessica then went on to work with the Appalachian Service Project as staff, first as a volunteer and then as a staff member for the past couple of years in the summer.
I've got to ask you,
Sure.
which I always ask my guests, and I think I know one of the answers to this question, but looking back so far in your life, who or what has had a major influence on you? Obviously, going down to these areas had a big, big impact on you.
Yeah.
What person or experience has had a major impact on you?
I think the impacts sometimes are cumulative. I would say as a sixth grader, I also had to go to an inner city camp. My parents were both very involved in civil rights. And in our community, we really didn't have a lot. We were a very homogenous white community. And so my dad sent me away to an inner city camp one time. And that was, I think as a sixth grader, that was a very important impact on my life, to be the only white person in an inner city camp for a summer.
Did you go willingly, or did you go kind of
I went as any shy child would go, you know. You kind of,
with
I was always a
trepidation?
little nervous about any new situation, to be very honest. And for the first time, I left that camp saying, this is my friend Leanne. I remember saying to my mother, this is my friend Leanne, who was as dear to me as a sister, and being completely colorblind at that point. And I remember, in retrospect, that was at that age, that was a very broadening experience to me, to begin seeing people outside of my own community and understanding, you know, that we are all really brothers and sisters. And then the next step is taking that to another country and seeing that, again, the languages may be different, but we are all brothers and sisters. And so these have built, and then being married, that was another, to such a wonderful man who allowed who encouraged this with our own children. There are lots of cumulative, I think, changing points in your life and people who have helped you make those. So,
What made you leave nursing and go to law school?
well, I didn't think I was really leaving nursing.
Oh.
The intention was when I had been at Duke, I wanted to be a nurse practitioner, and Duke had nurse practitioners where you would become a family nurse practitioner, you would move to a community, work with a doctor, and you would work with him. I didn't do surgery, but I could see patients, prescribe limited medications, and that's what I want. I didn't want to go to medical school. When I moved to Texas, I tried to pursue that and found that it was an institutional degree. So if I got an institution degree, I was looking at that point in oncology nursing. At MD Anderson, I couldn't move my nurse practitioner degree to any other place except MD Anderson. So I went into law as kind of hoping to make legislative changes in that so that nurse practitioners would become a statewide certification rather than an institutional. And then
And you practiced law for a few years.
I did. In between, I became a intern with a great law firm in Houston doing medical malpractice defense work, because at that time in the early 80s, they were going after the nurses as their way for medical malpractice. So I was able to defend my profession that way.
Yay.
And I loved doing that and felt like, I was doing something meritorious. So.
And about this time, did you meet your husband to be Richard?
Yeah, I did.
There's a story. Was there a story to that, how you met him?
Not really. He was an intern at Herman Hospital where I was a surgical intern. And we worked. I mean, I knew who he was, but I wasn't about dating people where I worked because that was a very bad grapevine kind of vicious rumor circle. So I wasn't interested in that. And we did begin dating, but it really wasn't until I went off to law school that we started.
So what
being
year
more
did you
serious.
get married? What year?
In 81, and we started dating in right about 79, 80, so.
So what brought you to?
Oh, I'm sorry, I got married in 81. I went to law school in 80.
Okay, and you got married in 81.
Yeah.
So what brought you to Iowa City? What?
Iowa City is my own petulance, I suppose. Our kids were all born there and worked there, and our careers were very busy.
All your children were born in Houston?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Our children were born in Houston, and they were raised by a nanny, and that wasn't ideal when your children spoke Spanish, actually more fluently than English. We figured we were being gone too much from the home. But it was really the violence of Houston at that point that I just simply could not live with anymore. It's fine if you're an individual or even a couple,
Sure.
but when you feel your children are threatened to that extent, I just couldn't live. So I said, I'll go anywhere. I'll give up my career, and anything that comes available, I want to go.
So
And I really want to go.
Was the next stop Iowa?
We went to England first to do research because Iowa came up. It looked like a great job. Richard's best friend in Houston looked like he was going to work here, and that's why we pursued it. And then the friend didn't work out for the friend's wife. She couldn't get her job. She was doing a fellowship here, and so that started crumbling. Meanwhile, we were in England, living in England with our children, doing research, and then the pediatric ENT doctor who was here got sick, and we got asked to come back early. So we did, but we kept our house in Houston because we weren't sure what was going to play out here, and loved it.
Good. Well,
Loved it ever since.
so tell me, as I mentioned in the introduction, you began this foundation, Kid Needs. Tell the viewers, for people who might not be familiar with this whole journey you've been on, about when it happened, and why did it start, and about your daughter's disease.
Okay. We wish we knew why it started, first of all. The year after we moved to Iowa, and actually we couldn't find a home in Iowa City, so I was living in Nebraska for a while while Richard worked here. And within just a few months of moving here into our home, our daughter got sick. It was we have identical twins, and she came down with a flu-like symptoms, had blood in her urine. They thought it was nothing really. And then about 7-8 months later, we got a biopsy showing that it was a rare autoimmune disease. But not bad, and not to worry that maybe over the course of 10 years she would have some renal function issues, but it was so mild that they were very hopeful it wouldn't happen. And at that point, I had just a second intuition, sixth sense about the whole thing, that it was going to be 17 months. That was our time limit. And I didn't really even remember this until she went into renal failure 17 months later, and my mother said, "Do you remember you said that to me?" And you know, but it's a rare autoimmune disease. We don't know how it starts, and we still don't. Our other twin daughter is not affected, but Jenna went the day after her first grades ended. She went into kidney failure, and she was completely unrecognizable because of the edema, but she was a good student, and she held on to this as her way of controlling something that was
She was in first grade?
First grade.
When
she was in
diagnosed.
kindergarten when she was diagnosed, and she was then 17. She was at the end of the day after first grade ended. Everybody else went off to vacation. She went to the dialysis unit. But she held on to that, and her courage that has gone in her, just the way she is. And people say, oh, she gets it from her parents, and she really doesn't. She gets it from herself, because she's always been that way. And she held on to this because she wanted to finish first grade and do a good job before she would go start dialysis. So she started dialysis, and you know, you look at your child and you think, she's 7 years old, what kind of a life is this going to be for her? She was dialyzing 12 hours a day, every day, just to make do. And her identical twin sister was not, and you can see exactly where your life is going to be. And so when she was 10 years ago, when she was 11, I finally said, that's it. We can't go on like this anymore. I can't see her having this kind of a restriction on her life. She was, we knew in a transplant, the chances of it coming back were about 95%. And so we started a foundation, and there was no research going on. Even before the foundation started, I had a name dreamed up, and I had a logo dreamed up, and I knew
You did?
this is where I wanted to go, but I was afraid to do it because I don't like fundraising. It's very awkward for me to do, and it still is very hard for me to do. But you just got to do what you got to do. And so my mother said, well, fancy that. The girl of my daughters, the one who wouldn't sell Girl Scout cookies, has to go raise $1 million to start.
That was your goal, $1 million.
Well, to even start, I mean, people were saying you're not going to get anything going before $1 million. So that was, I knew, you know, that was in front of me, and I didn't know how to do it because we were still new to the community. Once we'd been here, I mean, it'd been basically a disaster from a health standpoint, because a year later she was in the hospital all the time, and you don't get to integrate with your community very well when you're in the hospital. So anyway, it started, and that we just told our family and said, this is something we will do as a family. We will give all of our savings.
And Luke and Jessica, and
well,
we're
just
all
as
on board.
well, they were, but they were little, you know,
Sure.
they were young, and so it was something Richard and I were going to do, and just said, instead of Christmas gifts, you know, just give to this if we'd prefer that, thinking this is going to be a slow process, but we're going to get there the best we can, and then, you know, then it becomes a heartwarming story, and
Well,
just
there's
a tear-jerking.
the Chili Dog Festival. It's 10 years now.
10 years.
And you've made not only friends in the community and supporters in the community, you've raised quite
over $1 million.
Over $1 million. And I must tell my viewers that you have just finished an enchilada sale, an annual enchilada sale. You've been making enchiladas and selling them. So you have different, besides the Chili Dog Festival, there are other avenues that you are using to raise money.
Yeah, but that's all because of friends. I mean, it really, it started that Christmas when Betsy Boyd found out about it, who told all her friends, who said, let's see what we can do. And from there, it has been an unbelievable story, so.
And it's fun, and it's lots of fun, the Chili Dog Festival.
Well, I'm glad people think
Yeah,
it's fun,
I
because
think
you always
so.
kind of go, oh, I hate to ask her again, or, you know.
No.
So, but it is, you
And,
know,
okay, tell me, your children, I don't know how you find time to volunteer other places, but I know you are. But besides, you know, being a mother to this expanding brood that are in and out of the house, tell me what your children are about right now, just briefly, about what the paths they've taken.
well, right now I've got Ryan just hitchhiked up to Ottawa, Canada, got a
Yeah.
ride up to, and he's going to go look. He's 23 years old, and he is going to be finishing up at Iowa this year, and has applied to the Peace Corps, which we're hoping will work for him, because that would play to his strengths with languages and being with children and teaching.
And don't you have a sister who's going into the Peace Corps?
I have
or-
a sister, Mary, who lives in D.C., who is in the administration of the Peace Corps.
Peace Corps.
So he has had time to watch her adventures. He loves to travel, and so I hope that's where
I
he
wish
will
him
be.
well. I wish
Yeah.
him well.
He's a talented kid, and so
Uh-huh.
I think it would be a great match for him.
And now your two
And then
daughters.
Jenna and
Uh-huh.
Jessica are my twins. They're 21, and Jess will be a senior in engineering, civil engineering with environmental sustainability, and she's in New Zealand right now studying engineering and art. They're both double degreeing in art and engineering, and she loves it. And she's been the one who works in Appalachia in the summer times, and she's wonderful. And then Jenna is her twin sister, who's in renal failure, and she's also double degreeing in art, and she switched to engineering last year. So she's a year behind in engineering, but she's also interested in environmental engineering. So
And she's on dialysis how many hours a day?
she dialyzes 3 hours a day, every day, 6 days a week at home, but she lives on campus, and
Extreme courage is something I think about when I think
she
of her.
is.
She
She's
is great.
optimistic. She's courageous.
And courageous.
And she says, that's a part of my life. It is not who I am. And I love that attitude. So, and she makes these jewels. She's
Yes,
done that and
great.
raised, $30,000 or something for kid needs, that she donates everything just by her jewelry. And she's always into some business fundraising. Even as a 6 and 7-year-old, she was out selling homemade quilts at the River Fest.
She probably sold Girl Scout cookies, unlike her mother.
She would definitely. She's very good that way. So.
And then Luke is graduating from West High.
Luke is in Japan right now, and he'll be back. And he is graduating from West High, and he will go to Iowa and be in the College of Engineering also next year. So.
My.
Kids.
Yes, I was reading in a recent paper you gave to an organization, you said, and I quote, "Even when I was little, I thought of my life as a grand and at times a bizarre adventure. Strange coincidental things have always happened to me." Would you comment on this statement you made in that paper about things that of coincidence that happened to you, and that you think of your life as a strange or rather bizarre adventure?
I think adventure was the topic of the paper. So we were just talking, and I really did think of my life as an adventure, and perhaps it's just it's a perspective that one chooses to have. And there were so many funny things growing up. I think, it would be, even as a minister's kid, you can either say, oh, it's just really under the magnifying glass, or you can see all these funny things that do happen. And one of the things I remember happening was a bishop came, and the guy's name was Prince Taylor. So I thought he was a prince. I didn't quite know what a bishop was, but I knew from the fairy books what a prince was.
Right.
And so, I had my brothers and sisters all lined up when this guy came. We had flowers. We were throwing flowers. I had them bowing and curtsying. This guy didn't know what to think about it. And my dad said, he's a bishop. Well, what's going on? I said, well, he's a prince. No, he's a bishop. well, it's not as good as a print, so and then it went on from there, but it was always kind of funny things, and it was an adventure getting my siblings lined up, and it was things like this. We would have people from the inner city living in our house, which was a wonderful adventure, and coincidences, though, there were meetings of people that then you would find later
Some connection.
There was a connection later on. I would think in the paper, my first one was where my dad had a man come to stay with him from South Africa to be one of his students, who we became very close with a friend. And then, I was in college going over to see my sister in Spain, and they held the plane and for this important person who ended up sitting next to me. So of course I wasn't going to ask who this man was, because everybody was talking to him like he's so important, and I was too cool to ask who he was, so he asked who I was,
Yes.
And I said, I know somebody in South Africa.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was this man who had been a student of my father, and
Oh, my
he was going to
goodness.
see him that week because he was part of the African National Congress. And it was just, so those things happen in my life, and
Do you believe in synchronicity?
I don't know what you call it, whether it's somebody said, sometimes I think there's divine appointment going on, just meeting you to help me through this crisis. And I didn't know what divine appointment was, so I had to go to the internet to see what that meant. But it has been a lot of intersections of lives along the way, and some of those, even with kid needs and moving to Iowa, where people, when you don't know a community, all of a sudden there are people in your path who are exactly the right person to be in your path for that moment, or even for a longer period, but sometimes even for moments. They were there to give me what I needed to get to the next step. And so that's, they're there for whatever reason or for whatever you call it. It certainly has happened a lot in my life. And the cute thing was, my daughter called from New Zealand right before I gave that paper, and she said, man, the weirdest thing happened to me. We were going on a trip to New Zealand. They'd bought this car. The car broke down, was completely destroyed. And they were hitchhiking, and someone picked them up who happened to have a tow rope, who happened to have just put a hitch on their car so they could haul that car. They didn't have to leave it and hire a tow, and they hired them for 4 hours, pulled them for 4 hours back to where they could get rid of the car. She goes, I can't believe that happened to me. I said, join the club, honey.
It'll happen more frequently
I
as
think
you
it's out
travel
there.
and meet other people.
Yeah.
That's a great story. Tell me a bit, for viewers who don't know, what your husband is about and what his focus is, besides his family, in his work.
Oh, wow. Richard is wonderful, first of all. And he's a pediatric ear, nose, and throat doctor. He's the vice chair at University of Iowa. But he's also a professor of nephrology, and he runs a genetic research laboratory also there. And his focus has been on non-syndromic deafness and hopefully finding a treatment for some of those deafness that cause genetic causes of deafness, as well as finding a cause, hopefully, for Jenna's disease along the way.
How are you feeling about that? I mean, are you optimistic with the researchers beginning now? You're getting money into the researchers with MPGN2?
Yeah, we've had a name change too,
Oh,
make
you
it
did?
easier, yes.
Oh,
So
good.
we've had two.
Thank you. You had told me before the interview started.
Well, it just got changed at the last conference. Yes, things
okay.
are going great. But the funny thing was last year, Kid Needs was chosen to be one of the conferences of excellence at Hinxton in Cambridge, England. And so we had gathered 27 scientists from around the world, and they pledged to open their data to each other in an effort to try to find a treatment for this as quickly as possible. And the deadline was 5 years. That's our goal.
That's stunning, isn't it?
It is stunning on many levels.
Yes.
It's very stunning. And at that point, they also said, it really is not a true MPGN, which is membranoproliferative glomerular nephritis, and very hard to say. We're going to call it by its original name, dense deposit disease.
Dense deposit disease.
3D. How's that? That's so much easier.
That is. That's much easier.
Because it's very descriptive of what they find on electron microscopy when they look at the pathology samples. They find a dense deposit that is descriptive of the disease. So now it has a new name
New
too.
name. When you, I don't know how you have time even to sleep, and perhaps some nights you don't, but besides the work with Kid Needs and your other volunteer work and your family, what do you do for yourself? What do you like? What are your hobbies? Or do you not even have time for hobbies? Or what,
You know, it's funny how
what feeds you,
you know,
Lynn?
it's funny what feeds you. And I think as a teenager growing up in the civil rights and bra burning, and I was very much, you know, women's lib, gonna have a great, it was to think that the thing that would sustain you most in your life is raising children seemed like a foreign, you know, idea, but it really does. I love my family, and and that does feed me. And so doing work to find a cure for Jenna's disease or the type 1 diabetes that 2 of my other children have, it's all, it's life-sustaining. And through that, even though I have not done a lot of, I have my law degree and my nursing degree are current in Iowa, but it is also, I have research going on at the College of Nursing, which we just got published, and
Congratulations.
thank you. And
On?
we have an epidemiology database on
Okay.
MPGN2 and have some findings that are new, which are going to go out and actually become found out it's going to become a teaching unit for nurses now too, for their continuing education hours. So that's kind of fun. But I do that. I read. I love to read. I love to walk. I love to do things with my family. I
That's
mean,
great.
it's kind of, but I do. And we sew together and we talk together, and a lot of it, we hike, we ski, we do a lot of things together, so.
And you've always loved the outdoors, because you said growing, before the interview, you told me that you spend a lot of time on a farm.
Yeah,
That you still have the farm?
yeah, it was
Was it in your parents' family, or was it in yours and Richard's? Did you have the?
No, it was a great-great-grandmother who, with a daughter, a 19-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old nephew, came from Scotland, and they got a stagecoach, and they came across by themselves and homesteaded in Nebraska. And ever since, I think they got the land grant, or the deed in 1868 as a homestead, and it's been in the family since then.
And you've taken your children there?
And we went there to visit my grandparents growing up. Every summer we spent the summer out there, and yes, my children go there. We love.
So this place has meant a lot to you over the years, hasn't it?
I've loved it. And we
Yeah.
had, for somebody from New Jersey at that point, to have horses and chickens and gather your own eggs and walk through the wheat fields and the corn fields was heaven.
Paradise.
It really was.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was whatever runs in your blood sometimes. It doesn't run in all my siblings'
Sure.
blood. They don't all have the same appreciation for it, but I loved it. And I think that was one of the reasons that Iowa felt like home so quickly to me too, so.
So my last question is, what's the best part for you of living in Iowa City, since you mentioned that Iowa City has become so much your home? What do you like best about this community?
I love the people. I absolutely love the people. There's a sense of decency and kindness that there are a lot of very nice people in Houston, but as a community, it is opening and gracious, and I love the honesty and the kindness of the people. And there's a beauty to the land that I feel part of. And I love the fact, you know, there's the things like growing up where it took me 4 years before I wouldn't, when Richard would go out of town, I would sleep at the base of my stairs because we didn't have an alarm in my house, and just as a thing, we weren't going to do it because we were in the Midwest, but I still had that need to be protecting my children. We had alarms on everything in Houston, and it was very hard for me to shake that. And when it happened, it was
Liberating.
it was wonderful to think
Yeah.
I really can live like this in this place. So I don't know, I love the people of Iowa City, and I am very grateful to the people of Iowa City. So
Well, I'm going to leave the interview on that wonderful positive note, and thank you for being my guest.
thank you for having me.
My guest on One of a Kind has been Lynne Lanning, a wife, mother, remarkable volunteer, activist, and founder of Kid Needs, a research foundation for the study of a rare kidney disease. Words used to describe my guest are passionate, compassionate, adventuresome, intelligent, diligent, and lots of fun. Lynne Lanning is one of a kind.